Welcome to Business Spotlight. I'm joined today by Chris Pook, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation because Chris has been involved in a variety of different types of businesses, from ones that he has set up and run himself, particularly in the catering trade, such as Jasper's, but also more recently a franchise looking at the health and fitness. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, exploring some of the reasons and the mindsets, the mentalities behind all of that. Chris, welcome to the call. Delighted that you're
Hi,
here.
Gavin. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for your time as well. So, yes, I've introduced you to say that you started off in catering, although I'm not entirely sure that is where you started, is it? Give us a brief history of how you got into business and entrepreneurship.
No, I started my work life a long, long time ago, and I worked as a telecoms engineer. From there, I progressed into various different roles. But what I realised, I got made redundant twice in 4 years. Oh, no, twice in 2 years, sorry. And kind of realised that the money that was in the industry was gradually dwindling. A bill that was £200,000 was soon to be 150, then £100,000. So um, I decided that it was time to move on. So I probably wasn't necessarily enjoying it too much either.
Mm.
So I looked at catering business called Jasper's. So um, so I started that journey in 2013. And
This is a business you set up yourself.
no, so they're a franchise as well.
They were a franchise as well, right? Okay,
Yes,
yeah,
yes. So,
okay,
so on the 31st of December 2012, I wasn't a business owner. On the 1st of January 2013, I was a business owner.
right.
Um, and in all reality, it was a massive shock. So it probably took me 18 months to understand what was going on. But yeah, so that was it took me a long time. It wasn't easy, and kind of
Mm.
yeah, it wasn't easy. It was a challenging time.
Did you feel that you got the support you needed at the time from the franchise? I know many business owners out there do look at franchises or have got some of their own. Where was the problem in your mind? Was it
Um,
you? Was it with the franchisors or mixture of
I
the two?
I don't think I got the support from the franchisor that I could have done in that point in time.
Right.
Um, they would have recognised what I was doing on a weekly basis and understood that it wasn't where I needed to be. They were never really helpful. I think if I were to look back on that in all reality, I was at the trough of a situation where the people before me got a lot more support than I did, and the people after me got a lot more support than I did. But what that then meant was everything that then happened was down to me.
Right.
So um, if I did a good job and I learned stuff in that instance, that was
Yeah.
then good for me, and I was able to then build that business in that way. So yeah, they definitely could have been more supportive, but in that instance, I felt for me it was then just a massive learning curve to kind of pick myself up really and kind of carry on going.
So in those first 18 months, what did you learn? What were your main sort of business lessons from that period, would you say? And have you taken them with you forwards into other
I
ventures?
think so. I think anything that you do is is always a learning. There are times, and it's always you learn the most in the hardest times. I
Yeah.
always feel. I think if everything goes easy, then you don't necessarily learn too much. So probably I learned so much. I learned how to run a business. I learned how to manage people. I learned to an extent how to manage my time, which is still sometimes an issue now. But that just kind of learning at that point in time, I was doing everything within the business
Yeah.
because that was what was needed. So yeah, it was kind of everything, and I think you don't get you can't just dip your toe into running a business. You can't try it for a month ago. I'm not too sure on that. So I didn't know anything on the first day. Um, and it was then going on from there.
And a massive financial commitment as well, isn't it, to
Yes.
buy
I
into
yeah, I sold the property that I had at that point in time. I invested all my money into that business at
right.
that point in time. So um,
So
yeah, lots.
you came through those early days.
Yes.
What how did the business begin to develop after that? And did you
So it it just grew as a business. I kind of carried on knocking on doors. I carried on meeting people and that kind of thing, and basically just grew the customer base.
yeah.
Um, and probably 2 years in, we were probably doing okay at that point in time. But it took a long time to get there. It was lots of working late into the night, getting up early in the morning, and that kind of thing. But it was, yeah, at that point in time, it's just trying to build that customer database and kind of speaking to more people, getting more people to buy from us. Feel like probably potentially for the first, again, 18 months, I'd come from an industry, I didn't come from a food-based industry. I came from a technical industry. So I imagine those first meetings, I was probably absolutely horrific when I was talking to people because I didn't really understand what food was and didn't understand about it. But as time grew, I grew to understand what we could do and what we couldn't do.
Mm.
And I imagine at that point in time, I probably got better because I understood more about what food was. I think if I went to the first meeting, people asked me a question, well, I don't know, I don't know the answer. But having worked in the business for 18 months, I then learned a lot more about it.
Yeah. And often it's looking at your product and service, no matter what it is, but through the eyes of the customer, isn't it?
Yes.
And understanding their perspective, and that takes time to learn how to do that.
Yeah. And I think just going back to that, I think the other mistake I made was the fact that I just assumed because I was working for Jaspers and Jaspers were a franchise that everyone would buy from me.
Right.
So yeah, and I think again, just going back to that, it probably took me a couple of months to understand that that wasn't the case. Just because I'm part of Jaspers doesn't mean someone's going to buy from me. And I think in that instance, again, that was a little bit of a culture shock that took me a little bit to get used to because I just assumed that people would buy from me no matter what. But I learned that wasn't the case as well.
Yeah. Quite often, I find myself encouraging business owners to invest time in learning. We get, particularly if you bought a franchise, and you were talking earlier just about the long hours that you had to put in, and with long hours comes often the immediate excuse, well, I haven't got time to do anything else. I haven't got time to be thinking about my learning and my reading and sort of investing in my own skills. But actually, probably on reflection, many people think that's what I really needed to do, to some extent, at least at that point, to move things on a lot quicker. But you have obviously got to the point where you've taken. It's interesting to hear you describe your difficulties as learning opportunities. And you're still with Jaspers now, and we're, 12, 13 years on?
Yeah, so we're, yeah, 12 and a half years.
12 and a half years. And how's it faring now?
Yeah, so it's much better. Obviously, we survived COVID, which was the one thing from a business that supplies food for meetings and events.
Yeah.
On whatever date it was in March, we lost all the orders that we had at that point in time. So through the franchise, we did a couple of pivots and swivels, and I got lucky in the fact that one of my customers through COVID was ordering, well, for the first lockdown, was ordering about 3,000 lunches per week. So that helped us survive. Without that, we wouldn't have been here. But then we followed through and did some other stuff. And now, yeah, we're not where we were pre-COVID. We haven't got the amount of customers, but we are gradually building to that, and we'll get to that situation now.
Mm. Is it a little bit like trimming rose bushes in the sense that you might not have the size and the volume you had before, but maybe you have better efficiencies, you might have better margins, you've got a better foundation for growth, or am I just, is that wishful thinking?
Yeah, some of those things apply. I think it's also just a better understand what COVID gave me from a personal point of view was a time just to sit back and reflect upon what happened.
Yeah.
Up until that point in time. So I had lots of time to think to myself and that kind of thing. So I learned lots during that period and definitely became a better person in that time as well, in terms of the way that I feel about myself. Again, kind of going back to that learning, also that kind of better mental health and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
That allowed me, for me, COVID was a reset. So now I don't get as stressed about things now as I would have done what would have been 5 years ago now.
Okay. Yeah, I know that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you started off as an engineer, you moved into catering, but you're not satisfied with that. You're moving on again, or you've moved on again recently.
Yeah.
Tell us about your latest venture.
So about 2 or probably just over 2 years ago, I was kind of thinking I wanted to do something else. And for me, having understood the advantage of a franchise, I was looking at a fitness franchise. I looked at a couple. At that point in time, BFT or Body Fit Training popped up on my social media somewhere, wherever it was. I don't really know what happened. but I applied to be a franchisee for BFT. So I spoke to a few people. I met the co-founder and then met the other co-founder, and that was the journey. So we signed on the property, just over a year ago, and we had a build that didn't have the best of builds. So our opening was delayed by 3.5 months, but eventually we opened the doors mid-October.
Right. That's the fit out you're
Yes.
talking about there, where you've got to get
Yes,
right.
yes, so yes, so yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, so effectively, we kind of got an empty shell that was fitted out, but the day we were due to open, we realised that the drains weren't working properly.
Right.
So,
Okay. And there's always these unforeseen problems. But
yes,
you pressed on. This is another franchise that you're involved
yes,
in now. How do you balance? I mean, is Jasper's going to suffer as a result of you moving on to this, or have you set things up so that you can actually expand into this new space? And in your head as well. You mentioned your thinking is a really important part
yeah.
of this.
To to an extent, I always realised that that business would suffer a little bit because I'm not working in there. Let's say the 24/7 that I was pre opening up the studio.
Yeah.
Kind of understood that. But for me, the advantage of BFT over Jaspers is that you can open up multiple locations. It takes a lot less management overhead in that way. So that was an advantage for me. And for example, in terms of when I was meeting existing franchisees, I met someone that had lived in Melbourne, had 3 studios in Melbourne and one in New Zealand. So
Yeah.
you can't
And
in that
that's not
situation.
they're not close together, are they? By
No,
any
they're not.
means?
And for me, that was the idea. Also, to the extent is one of my business partners, Ben. He already runs another fitness studio, so he has a much better understanding of that. I think if I was going in it by myself,
Mhm.
I would have issues. But soon after I started the journey, I got Ben involved because I understood that Ben has a really big expertise. And what Ben wants to do, similar to me, is open up multiple studios in that way. So that was there. So in terms of my headspace, studio doesn't take up that much space in my head, but I understood that by not being in my catering business 24/7, that there would be an element of customer loss, let's say. It hasn't been that bad, but there would always be that element of that. I accepted that was going to be the case.
Okay. So I'm assuming here that in the catering business, you've got a well-structured team. You've got people who know
Yes.
what they're doing, they're working to
Yeah.
systems, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. Nothing's reliant on you per se.
A few
You're
small
not,
things are, but the
yeah,
majority of it isn't.
right, okay. And so the other thing that strikes me is the contrast between when you bought your first franchise and when you bought your second franchise. It seems
Yeah.
from what you're saying that you're far more planned and aware going into this second franchise than perhaps you were in the first.
Yes, I think what to an extent I understand what franchising is, you know, um, and I made I made a similar mistake with both in the fact that I forgot when I opened up BFT or looked to open it, I forgot how difficult it was to start up a new business. Although it's a franchise, it's still not easy. I've forgotten that bit, and after about 2 weeks, I was like, "Oh, I
Yes,
remember
I
this now.
remember
This
this
is
now.
yeah, this isn't just turning up and doing that stuff." But I understood
Yeah,
that very quickly. Um, but I understand what a franchise is. I know that
yeah,
you are buying into systems and processes from a business that is successful in that way. I understand that in the majority of cases, if that business isn't successful, it's down to the operators, not down to the systems and processes that you're following. If you follow those systems and processes, you should
yeah.
then have a profitable business.
One of the most common phrases in any franchise is use the system, work the
Yeah,
system, isn't it?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's what it's there for. That's essentially
Yes.
what you're
Yeah.
investing
Yeah.
into.
You pay them a fee at the beginning of your contract, and that's to learn their systems and processes. If you don't then take that on board, then
Yeah,
that's
waste of
down
time.
to you. But in that similar vein, times of stress and stuff, you revert back
Yeah,
to your most basic
yeah,
basic self, and sometimes it isn't always easy to do that. So and definitely working with someone in that instance. Again, in the catering business, I'm by myself on the
yeah.
studio.
No
I,
partner.
I'm not. So you
Yeah,
can spot when someone isn't doing something they should do. Hopefully,
yeah,
we can reflect on each other.
yeah. But you have, you know, with this second time around, you've obviously forgotten what it was like in the first few days. But nevertheless, you've done your research and you've got a partner that knows what they're
Yes.
doing, and
Yeah.
you've seen the models work elsewhere. So what is it that you get from entrepreneurship? Why do you do this? The sort of the motivation to run your own
I,
business.
I feel that's probably just the age. I think I don't really know the answer. It's something I think about quite a lot because the reality is that you, it's it sounds arrogant, all that stuff. It's completely different being a business owner to not being a business owner. You know, you have the problems that people that aren't a business owner don't understand. And you speak to other business owners and you go, well, I have that problem, and the same as you do, but their friends don't because they work in a different environment.
Yeah,
And I think it's just that I enjoy working for myself in that way. But the reality is looking at the studio is in terms of the BFT stuff is about building a legacy for my family,
yeah,
something that they can enjoy going forward. And I think that was the main reason why I went for that. I don't ever think I could go back to the corporate world in that instance and work for somebody.
yeah.
Um, but maybe one day I will do. Um, but yes, I think it's just that. I just enjoy it. I like working. I kind of get up and I go to work. I've not had a single day through all of those hard times where I've not woken up and thought I don't want to do this. And I think that's
That's an
probably it's
important
probably
thing.
why it's
Yeah,
probably why I enjoy it. You
yeah.
know, so even on those darkest days, at no point do I think I'm not enjoying this.
If I can be cheeky to offer a potential answer, then from my perspective to what you're
Yeah,
saying, I think it comes down to this. And when I work with business owners, particularly when I initially start working with them, we look at some what I call fundamental principles. And one of them is about your sense of identity. Because when you're working with your customers, your clients, your team, they can see your behaviors, your decisions, the actions that you take, and they think that is you. Whereas actually, what is really you lies below the surface, you know, the identity iceberg. It's your values, your skills, and those kind of things. Quite often, when I say to somebody, you know, what's your sense of identity, they'll say, "Oh, I'm a chemist, or I'm an accountant, or I'm a father, or I'm a Man United supporter, or whatever it is." They'll attach their sense of identity to a thing and quite often to a job, even if they're a business owner. With you, the sense I'm getting is your sense of identity is although it sounds rather cliched, is you are an entrepreneur. You look for opportunities. You're interested in business. You're prepared to learn. Learning is a lifelong journey as well. And you take your lessons and you put them into effect. And that's, you know, I know I'm speaking on your behalf, but I've had many of these kind of conversations with people before, and I'm not getting the sense that you see yourself as a fitness trainer, owner, or a caterer, or an engineer, or any of those things, but somebody that takes things from one and can transfer those skills into another situation.
yeah, and just going back on that, I think I don't necessarily consider well, I haven't considered myself to be an entrepreneur. But the reality is in that way is the fact that I now have two businesses that I've started. So you've kind of got to really say that I am. And whilst it isn't something that I thought about myself as, again, it was a conversation I had with my wife a couple of months ago, was we kind of are an entrepreneur now. And I'd never thought about it in that way. But yeah, I think what you said there is I probably enjoy taking something from the start and then going on in that instance.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's probably what I enjoy. And I guess if that's an entrepreneur, then that's me. But I wouldn't
Well, I
necessarily.
think it is, but part of it is also, I mean, the theme to our podcast is explorer, so we could use the
Yeah.
word explorer, but part of it is also your motivations. And you talk there about your legacy, you know, wanting to leave a legacy for your family and things like that. So again, it's motivations. Um,
Yes.
if you're an employed accountant, you may not have the same type of motivations. I may be doing some of them a disservice. I don't know. They just want to be good at their job, whereas you want to explore. And
Yes. And I think you have to then realize that everyone's not like you as well.
yeah,
And again, over time, I've learned that. Um, yeah, you think about certain things and think, well, everyone thinks like you, but they don't. People think in a different way to you. They don't take a different approach. And sometimes my approach is correct, and sometimes my approach isn't. But it's then going, okay, I do what's right for me, but what's right for me isn't right for you and isn't right for the person next to me, kind of thing.
you were made redundant twice in a short period of time. You
Yes.
could, and you could have. arguably you could have gone either way in those two circumstances. You could have said, right, well, I need to find a job that's got stability, um,
Yeah.
or you could say, actually, I'm going to take control of my own destiny. And you probably didn't think of it maybe in those terms at the time, but that's what was going on.
That's exactly the way I thought about it. In all reality, it was I don't want to be in this situation again. I want to control my own destiny, and that was why I started the journey.
Okay, and there I think is one of the key definitions of an entrepreneur, in my opinion. That is somebody that trusts themselves more than they trust the people that they were previously working for.
Haven't always trusted myself. That's probably right. Yes.
Chris, what have you got planned for the future? You're probably going to say, I want to embed and double down on everything I'm doing right now. But looking ahead, what are your thoughts?
So the plan now is to open up more studios. So we are getting to the point in our current studio where we need to be financially in terms of member numbers. At that point in time, we'll start looking for other studios. Based upon our learnings from this studio, we will potentially look at two at one time, knowing that one's going to take forever and one probably isn't. But that's certainly the plan going forward. At that point in time, I don't know when I'll stop. So I don't know when I'll stop. I think I'll just carry on. But yes, but also you don't know, do you? I think, never know, in 2 years' time, I might pivot and do something else. You don't know. But it's something that I've enjoyed doing this. I enjoy working with somebody else. If I do decide to do anything else in the future, it will be because I'm not enjoying it. So
That makes sense.
yeah.
It's been fascinating talking to you, and
Thank you.
and you've been very honest as well, and you're very open in your responses and self-reflective. So that's very refreshing, and I look forward to sharing some of the key learnings from this podcast going forwards as well.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.